It's time to break down the regions of Brazil. After having covered the cultural regions of the United States, China, India, and Russia in previous videos, by popular demand it's time to give Brazil a shot. Brazil is another geographically large and highly populated country with a wide array of diversity in regional cultures, lifestyles, geographies, and economics. All in one language, Portuguese. Holy smokes, that's more linguistic homogeneity than any of the countries we've covered before. That's a monolingual culture right there. Looking at Brazil at a glance, I estimate that there were approximately 5 major regions, and both online charts and my on-the-ground contacts supported this. I did some digging and found that, generally speaking, this map is a pretty fair breakdown of Brazil's regions. However, all of the region maps I found online only went on a state-by-state basis, and this is something that a couple countries have a problem with, not India though, where the country's subdivisions might not be well reflective of cultural and lifestyle differences, let alone economic and geographic differences. So we've taken all these factors and more into consideration and plotted some borders for Brazil's 5 major regions along with their respective subregions. Regions within regions that do share a lot of similarities with the larger region, but have some unique attributes of their own that help distinguish them, though not enough to justify considering them entirely separate regions of their own. Hello audience, Mr. Z here with another video for you. If you're new to the channel, welcome. We have videos like this every week where we talk about history and politics, so be sure to subscribe, leave us a comment about what you'd like to see next, and stay tuned for more. If you'd like to join the community, we do have a public Discord server linked in the description, along with a community-made subreddit loaded with memes, charts, maps, and more. And of course, if you'd like to help support the channel directly, consider becoming a channel member or donating to us on Patreon. Having dealt with censorship and demonetization in the past, especially when covering more sensitive topics, your support really goes a long way to keeping the channel going. All members do gain access to a separate members-only Discord server where you can speak with me directly. Now, let's get back to our regularly scheduled program. Let's begin with the economic and cultural nerve center of Brazil, the southeastern region, or as I call it, the greater Sao Paulo region. Highly urbanized, it is easily the most densely populated, wealthiest, and thoroughly developed of Brazil's regions, with a diverse economy featuring tech, trade, and heavy industry sectors among others. In climate, this region is relatively mild when compared to the rest of Brazil, boasting a subtropical, coastal, and highland environment which gives it a greater degree of variety to its landscape. Beyond its urbanized areas, this region sees its coast separated from the interior by the Serra do Mar mountain range, wooded by the Atlantic forest. Culturally, this region is a meeting point between the historically ethnic Portuguese north and the south, where immigrant waves from Germany, Italy, Poland, even Japan, and various other countries considered too alien to be assimilated into Portuguese culture were sent into what was then the frontier with the expectation that most wouldn't survive, while opening up the south to further Portuguese settlement, though of course these immigrant populations endured, making the south their own. The greater Sao Paulo region forms a cross-section of Brazilian identity in general, with noteworthy influences from not only the north and south, but from all regions of Brazil, and from abroad as well, the region being the foremost destination for tourists around the world, as well as foreign businesses. Insofar as subregions, I initially considered the divide to be between the coasts and the interior lands within the Planalto Paulista, separated by the Serra do Mar mountain range, and while that is true to a degree, a more accurate partition would be between north and south, where the south, the core region with a smaller sliver of coast, is dominated by the inland city of Sao Paulo and neighboring cities, while the north is more thoroughly defined by the coastal city of Rio de Janeiro and its coastal neighbors, constituting a slightly distinct subregion. The northeastern tip of Brazil, what I'd like to refer to as the Maranhao Region, one of the original names for northern Brazil and the original European name for the Amazon River, was initially the only territory in South America that Portugal had claimed to by treaty, Spain having initially claimed the entire rest of the continent for itself. This region was the point of one of Portugal's earliest successful settlement efforts, Pernambuco or New Lusitania. The sugarcane economy of the northeast eventually led Portugal to begin importing a large number of African slaves to the region, contributing to its future demographic makeup. Decades after its founding, Brazil had pursued a policy of intermarriage and mixture to assimilate both the native and African populations into a singular Portuguese-Brazilian identity which transcended racial boundaries, creating the core Portuguese-Brazilian Pardo or mixed population, and it would constitute the dominant population group across the north of the country, though this region also features a significant and largely unmixed black population concentrated along the region's southern coast. The vast majority of the region has a semi-arid and rocky scrub or even desert environment. However, we may not characterize this as the core of the region, but merely a sub-region, the sub-region of the Caatinga. I'm sure I'm probably mispronouncing a bunch of these, but look, I'm an American. What do you want me to do? While the rocky, deserty environment defines the majority of this landmass, the majority of the population is instead concentrated within the thin sliver of coastal plains due east. Though the coasts are littered with cities and beaches, the Maranhao region is among Brazil's poorest, especially when considering its relatively higher levels of development compared to other low-income regions of Brazil. That being said, it also contains some of the highest concentrations of historical sites in all of Brazil, especially in the state of Bahia. As per its history with slavery, the agricultural crop of sugarcane and other tropical agricultural staples in general have remained the chief economic contribution of this region to Brazil's economy. The lands of Brazil's deep south, or the Sul region, are the country's most temperate and mild, even receiving some snow here and there. Home to both a large swath of Brazil's Atlantic forest and pampa landscape, its geography is a combination of plains, hills, forests, and mountains. As stated previously, this region of Brazil is more distinctly composed of later waves of settlement not belonging to Brazil's majority ethnic Portuguese makeup, but instead being largely comprised of German, Italian, and Slavic descended populations. Unlike northern regions of Brazil where Portuguese culture was more dominant and intermixture was widely adopted, the Sul region is not nearly as racially mixed, both on account of it lacking a large non-white population to mix with, as well as a distinct sense of identity from the Portuguese-Brazilian culture, which had largely adopted the policy in an attempt to assimilate non-Portuguese populations into itself. As a result, the Sul region is generally considered to be the whitest part of Brazil. The climate and geography make Brazil's deep south an ideal location for agriculture and one of the most agriculturally rich lands in all the country, especially when it comes to wheat, poultry, and pork production. In terms of per capita wealth, it's one of the wealthiest regions in all the country and one of the highest in terms of development in all of Brazil. Next is Brazil's interior, or the Planalto Central, which is defined by a highland savanna environment and a tropical climate. Colloquially referred to as the Cerrado, the grazing lands of the region make it ideal for cattle ranching, and the region does stand at the forefront of Brazil's beef production. In fact, it is the most agriculturally productive region in the entire country. However, while agriculture does constitute a major facet of the region's economy, what makes the region especially valuable and distinct from its neighbors is its tremendous mineral resources. Having some of the highest concentrations of iron, bauxite, and niobium in not only Brazil but in the entire world. Not to mention substantial deposits of gold, copper, and various gemstones. The region is somewhat developed, but the vast majority of that development is isolated to various communities spread out across this vast landmass with significant gaps between them. And that is reflected in both population maps and in an observation of wealth, saying that per capita income is nowhere near what it is in more developed neighboring regions. This is perhaps the second most underdeveloped region in all of Brazil, with populations becoming more scarce the further inland you go. Ethnically, the Planalto Central is somewhat mixed, with some communities more reflective of the populations found deep in the south, and others more similar to what you would find in the north and east. Subregions include the Pantanal subregion, distinguished by its more sandy wetland environment and cross-border ties, and the Mato Grosso subregion, which is less characteristic of the savanna landscape and is more of a transitional region between the interior and the tropical rainforests of the Amazon. Finally is the region of Amazonia, home to Brazil's famed rainforest and the highest concentration of the country's Amerindian population. The region is so sparsely populated and so underdeveloped that it even houses some tribes who have remained isolated and uncontacted to this day. As you might have assumed, the climate and landscape of the region are defined as tropical with a rainforest environment. Though it is the least developed, most underpopulated, and least economically productive of Brazil's regions, its natural and largely unspoiled beauty make it a treasured region all on its own. And while it lacks the agricultural and industrial capacity of the interior and greater Sao Paulo regions, Amazonia is still a major provider of natural resources for the rest of Brazil, chiefly timber and natural rubber. As stated previously, the region has largely been settled by the Pardo population commonly found across the north, with small communities and developments still emerging within the region, especially along the Amazon River and along the border with Peru. The one subregion of Amazonia would be the greater area surrounding the city of Belém, at the mouth of the Amazon River, and which forms something of a gateway into and out of the region, and many Amazonian goods can be expected to pass through here on their way to be shipped. Although it shares in much the same tropical climate and even some of the forested environment found deeper within Amazonia, Belém is far more developed and densely populated than any other Amazonian settlement. Looking to the different regions of Brazil, it's really quite fascinating how much is concentrated in two regions. Genuinely, Brazil could be nothing but the greater Sao Paulo region and the interior region. In these two regions, you have the greatest concentration of economic production, resource production. The Sul region is productive enough and self-sufficient enough that it theoretically could become its own country, and it does have a secessionist movement, though from what I hear, it supposedly isn't all too serious. That being said, if the Sul region were to become its own country, it would be almost insignificant on the world scene. In contrast, the northern territories would be extremely disadvantaged if they were to break away or just be separated from the greater Sao Paulo region and the interior, which just generally provide a lot for the country. Again, these two regions are basically carrying the entirety of Brazil on their shoulders. But let's not get off on a tangent there. Let me know what you think in the comments below, if there's anything I missed or anything that might need to be added, especially if you're from Brazil and have some personal insight into what some of these areas are like. We'd love to hear it. Like the video if you enjoyed it and subscribe for more. Mr. Z, out.